The original 1993 release of The Seventh Guest occupies a rather interesting time in the history of both gaming as well as technology as a whole. The title was considered a technical marvel, being one of the first games to be released using CD-ROM, a medium that was still considered quite cutting edge, despite having come out almost a decade before that. This shift in storage mediums gave The Seventh Guest plenty of extra space that it wouldn't otherwise have access to if it were released, like other games at the time, on floppy disks. The title took advantage of this by featuring high-resolution, pre-rendered environments along with live-action, full-motion video cutscenes featuring real actors rather than computer-generated sprites or 3D models. Now, while quite dated by standards of even just a few years later, The Seventh Guest was still considered to be, by many, one of the benchmarks to hit when developing an FMV-based point-and-click adventure game. If not for its gameplay and puzzle design, then at least for its visual flair, presentation, and its storytelling.
This book seems to be the key. Where's the key to the book?
Now, fast forward a couple of decades, and in 2023, we get a VR-based remake of The Seventh Guest, complete with brand new puzzles that make a lot more sense than the original, a fully realized 3D recreation of the original's mansion, and even brand new actors taking on the roles of various other guests throughout the story. Considering the niche nature of VR, however, it was only a matter of time before the game made its way to more traditional gaming platforms, and now it has been fully translated for flat-screen gameplay on PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and Nintendo Switch. In the modern gaming industry, where point-and-click adventure games have largely disappeared and horror has split off from the genre entirely, becoming its own thing thanks to a variety of releases ranging from Resident Evil and Silent Hill, keeping this in mind, The Seventh Guest feels quite anachronistic. It still has the original's spooky atmosphere and dark storyline. However, if you're expecting to be scared, this isn't quite the game for you. Rather, The Seventh Guest remake is more focused on making you flex your mental prowess over its several puzzles, which can be tackled at your preferred pace, since there aren't really any time constraints or grotesque creatures that are chasing you down. The story of The Seventh Guest remake revolves around the mansion of Henry Stauff. While not too many details are revealed in the beginning, the basic plot outline is that at one point in the past, Stauff invited 6 guests to spend a night at his mansion at Harley-on-Hudson in New York, and to solve a variety of puzzles that would lead them to discovering his deepest, darkest secrets. However, none of the guests were able to make it too far, with many of them experiencing strange, supernatural events during their stay. You, as the unnamed protagonist, have taken it upon yourself to make your way through the mansion's various rooms in your efforts to discover just what happened to those original guests and what Stauff's secrets might be. Thankfully, The Seventh Guest remake also retains much of the charm of the original by featuring FMV cutscenes that feature live-action performances by real actors. Just about every character, from the deep-in-debt married couple Edward and Eleanor Knox to actress Martine Burden, has been wonderfully portrayed by their respective actors, with equal amounts of nuanced emotion and hammy overacting that keeps just about every encounter you might have with their memories thoroughly entertaining.
Forced to grow up in a grim and grimy orphanage, a quiet child without any friends, so he made his own. Soon he discovered he could entertain the other children with the puppets he had made. Everyone loved the shows young Henry put on.
The general structure of The Seventh Guest remake is quite linear. At any given time, only a few rooms of the mansion will be available, each room housing its own set of puzzles that you'll need to solve in order to make progress, unlocking more rooms in that process. The puzzles themselves are also quite self-contained. Even if some of the puzzles might connect to others, these connections never extend to anything outside of the room that you're in, so you never really have to worry about having forgotten a key item or important detail as you make your way throughout the game. When it comes to the actual puzzle-solving gameplay, things are once again quite simple, and there isn't even an inventory screen like you would find in the Monkey Island series, just for example. You only have a lantern that lets you look at things in the past, and a second hand that can hold things for you while you figure out what to do next. The puzzles themselves are also largely focused on logical thinking, sometimes asking you to handle simple mathematics like addition, and other times making you come up with clever solutions to a minigame, just for example. The puzzles in the 7th Guest Remake are some of the best things about this game, especially when compared to the original, since the 1993 classic was well known for its logic-based puzzles being absolutely illogical. However, the puzzles also betray the fact that the 7th Guest Remake was originally envisioned as a VR game. A surprising number of puzzles revolve around moving things around on a surface, which indicates that fine motor skills were required of players' hands. Moving these same objects using analog sticks doesn't quite hit in the same way, unfortunately. The VR-styled puzzles felt especially egregious in Hamilton Temple's room, where there was a heavy emphasis on using a pair of magical top hats to teleport between two places. While the original VR version would have you literally reach into the top hat and grab a key item, just for example, the regular version of the game has you simply hitting the pick up item button, robbing the puzzles of much of their identity and their uniqueness. Other places where the VR roots of the 7th Guest Remake show themselves are in the movement itself. While walking or running around feels fine most of the time, hitting the crouch button doesn't even seem to feature any gameplay animations. Rather, the title cuts to you simply being at a lower point of view than you would be if you were standing. This, however, is a minor quibble in the overall grand scheme of things, especially since the only thing it really affects is the game's overall presentation. Generally speaking, the 7th Guest Remake is an incredibly engaging experience. Sure, it might suffer from a slow start since it's taking its time and setting up the various characters that you discover secrets about, while also making sure that you fully understand the simple gameplay mechanics that will be used for its logic-based puzzles. Once it gets going, however, it becomes easy to get trapped into the general loop of clearing a room of all puzzles and then convincing yourself that you'll just take a look at the next room and maybe solve one or two of the simpler puzzles that are there. And before you know it, you've accidentally spent a couple of hours combing every square inch of that room to find the final puzzle piece. Now sure, it won't be offering you any frights, but the 7th Guest Remake still feels like a fantastic way to spend a relaxing evening with a cup of tea.
And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.